Welcome back to episode 61 of the Missouri River Bottom Fort X Mega Farm. Spring has officially arrived here on the Missouri River Bottoms, and that means it's planting season once again. We've made it all the way to year 5, and our operation has grown into an absolute powerhouse. But with growth comes a lot of work. We now manage over 1,500 acres of farmland that all needs to be prepped, planted, and fertilized in a very short window. It's going to be a massive undertaking, but we've got the equipment, the manpower, and the drive to make it happen. Last episode, we made some major upgrades to our seeding fleet, dropping over $2 million on 2 brand new SeedHawk 980 toolbars, each paired up with a 9,500-gallon fertilizer caddy. These rigs are absolute monsters when it comes to efficiency, and they're going to completely change how we plant here on the mega farm. With the ability to carry both seed and fertilizer at once, we can now cover huge amounts of ground without having to constantly stop and refill. Today, we're putting those SeedHawks to the test for the very first time. Right now, we're out in one of our 200-acre fields, planting a massive stretch of soybeans. The weather's perfect, the soil moisture is just right, and those new SeedHawks are chewing through the acres faster than anything we've ever run before. But the work doesn't stop there. Across the road, we've got another big operation running at the same time. I've got 3 of our tractors hooked up to 3 brand new FlexiCoil cultivators, and they're busy working our 250-acre field, getting it all loosened up and prepped for seeding. The plan is to have the cultivators wrap up this field just as the SeedHawks finish their soybean field, so we can move those big rigs straight across the road and keep that seeding momentum going without missing a beat. Once the cultivators finish up their passes, I'll be splitting up the team. I'll send 2 of the 3 tractors down the road to start on our 100-acre field right next to the farmyard, which also needs to be tilled and prepped for planting. Meanwhile, I'll be jumping into the 3rd tractor myself to tackle something new, a big expansion project I've been planning for a while now. That's right, today we're growing the farm once again. I just finalized the purchase of 5 new fields surrounding our main yard, and the plan is to merge them all together into one giant connected field. Once we tie those in with the 100-acre field the other tractors are working on, we'll be left with a brand new 350-acre mega field. That single move will add another 250 acres to our total operation, pushing our total farm size up to nearly 1,750 acres for year 5. That's an incredible milestone for the Missouri River Bottom Mega Farm, and it really shows how far this operation has come since we started. Between the new seeding rigs, the expansion projects, and the hundreds of acres we need to work through today, there's going to be nonstop action across every corner of the map. It's going to take a lot of coordination, a lot of horsepower, and a lot of diesel, but that's what we do best around here. So buckle up. We've got new fields to merge, crops to plant, and some serious ground to cover as we continue building one of the biggest and most advanced farms in Missouri. Let's fire up the engines, drop those toolbars in the dirt, and get to work here on the Missouri River Bottom Fort X Mega Farm. If you're enjoying the Missouri River Bottom Mega Farm series, please like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe.